what are we going to be learning today? We're going to go over 5 main points. The first point is how to get the how to identify the right sponsors for you. We're going to also look into how to attract those sponsors to your event and generate interest, in which way you're going to be contacting them and reaching out to them. And we're going to go in a bit more detail for the 2 last points, which is how to create an appealing sponsorship presentation and how to design a customized proposal, which can be attractive for your sponsors and well, I'd say have more chance of getting those sponsors on board. So why is sponsorship important for your event? When it's done right, a sponsorship is actually a win-win situation. It's not just value which is being created for the organizer and the sponsor, but it also creates a relationship which everyone can benefit from, including the audience. They're going to gain exposure to eventually to some providers which they might be interested in using for their businesses. So there is really a lot to win from the sponsorship, and it's not just a two-way relationship, but it's actually it involves many more people than we'd actually think about. It's not only about cash. Sponsorship, of course, is what's really going to help you finance your event. But you need to think about it also as eventually accesses to services. Some sponsorships are going to be intangible and are going to be based on the access to some technology which is suggested by the sponsor, or it could be an access to some goods. It could also be cross-promotion. So for instance, within Eventia, we have one of our sponsors, which is a tech provider, which we put forward for our clients to be able to use, like a photo booth through the virtual stage. And they also promote us to event organizers whenever they get the opportunity. So it's interesting to see that it could be financing or services or goods which you can access. On the other side, sponsoring is going to give more credibility to your event. Think about registering to an event and you see that there's a famous brand associated to the event. This is going to guarantee a certain level of quality for your attendees. You're also going to gain access to their audience by the fact that they're sponsoring an event. They're eventually also going to communicate on your event, and in that way eventually bring more attendees from their customer basis or their audience. So it can be very interesting in this way to gain more attendees. And finally, something we're going to come back on a little bit later, a sponsorship is going to be a relationship which can be exploited in future occasions and situations. So we're going to be looking at long-term partnerships in this case. So one of the questions is how to identify the right sponsors for your event. You need to think about the topic of the event and the related industries, of course. What you want to do is analyze your target audience and the brands that they resonate with. For instance, if we're talking about an event which deals with digital marketing and virtual events, like the get-together events we organize, of course, we're going to be reaching out to SaaS companies with services which are related to the industry. If we take another example and we take a sports-related event, your sponsors might want to be energy drinks, gear, which sportswear, which might be used by the people attending the event. So this might seem quite obvious, but it's always something which you need to bear in mind. Have the right sponsors for the right audience. Then we're going to think about how to attract them. Ask yourself, why would they want to sponsor your event? Would it be for brand image? Would it be for return on investment, for example? You're going to have to identify the goals which they have and see how you can solve them through the sponsorship. So you're basically going to have to think about the common reasons for sponsoring an event. Why would you sponsor an event yourself? In case it's not as, I'd say, as obvious to them, some things you could suggest to them would be visibility, gain more exposure through the event and reach the right audience with logos on your website, stage time, merchandising, which we'll be talking about quite soon after also. You could also give them some connection with the audience in the way that they'll be able to directly promote their services to the audience through stage time, through networking, and all sorts of different ways, which through events you're going to be able to interact with the audience. Something which will be very interesting to put forward is that you're going to give them a specific audience. This could be a niche audience, which they won't be able to reach through other ways than events. Bear in mind, with regards to lead generation, how hard it can be and how long it can take to look for the right leads. If you sponsor the right event, you'll have a direct access to a pool of people who could be interested in what you have to offer. So it's going to be very interesting on that side too. Sponsors might also be looking for business relationships. For instance, they might want to sponsor a certain event in order to, in the future, have better access to certain services which you offer. So there can also be some business relationships built on the fact that they've been a sponsor at your event. And if you think on return on investment, something you need to bear in mind is it's of course, I'd say essential to measure the return on investment you're going to have in the sponsorship or any type of investment you make. But you need to bear in mind that events are a place where connections are going to be generated. They're going to start there. They're not necessarily going to be signing deals at the event. So it's important that if you talk about return on investment with your sponsors, you think about the long term and that you have a plan of evaluating the return on investment after a certain period of time. So how to contact these sponsors? Now you know how to target or who to target them, you need to make the leap and contact those people. If it's the first time that you're looking for sponsors, you might want to leverage all the connections you have. These could be your professional network, your personal network, people around you which you know work in different industries. You really need to leverage everything you have and reach out to all of these people. You want to introduce your events and go into more detail if they're interested. Another idea could be going through your sales department. If you have some people on your sales team, they'll be able to help you reach the right people in the right way. Remember that the fact of gathering these sponsors is actually sending them sponsorship packages. So don't hesitate to lean on your sales department. A very powerful tool for marketing people is, of course, LinkedIn. I'd say even more for PR and marketing departments who are very active on the social media. And you're pretty much going to be able to reach out to the right people through this, through LinkedIn. So this needs to be leveraged a lot. And finally, the last point would be, if you've already organized events, think about the speakers you've had, think about the sponsors you've had in your past events, and try to contact them to see if they want to be sponsors again for a new edition, or if they can refer you to peers in their industry which might be interested. A quick tip which we can give you here is that the people you want to be in touch with are the PR department and the marketing department. You need to make a clear proposal and make it clear that you know what you're going to be offering and that you're going to be able to provide them with a lot of value. So now you know how to reach out, you need to create an appealing presentation for your project. And all of this in the goal of showing the fit which you could have with your sponsors, or that your event has with their sponsors. If we go into an example, we organize periodic events which which are entitled Get Together. And the way we approach our sponsors generally is with storytelling. What you want to do here is you want to start with a story of your company, or maybe someone else's story which you've impacted through your actions. And the most important part here is to create an emotional connection. Remember that decisions are generally made on emotional impacts which you're going to be offering to or suggesting to the decision makers rather than rational impacts. So you want to include your mission statement and your values. Eventually, you might even want to go down to the detail of speaking of a specific person in a position. If you're reaching out to CMO, talk about the last CMO you talked to and how your sponsorship package enabled him to reach some new demand for some new lead generation, for example. Show the extent of the impact you've managed to have on similar profiles and create an emotional connection with the person you're speaking. I suppose this is something which is true for any type of sales approach. What you also want to do is be very specific about who will be attending. Why could they be a good fit for the sponsor? So, of course, you want to make sure that the leads which your sponsor is looking for, if it's exposure they want to gain, correspond to the profiles which they would want to be reaching out to. Make sure that you're relevant to them. This also suggests that you need to understand very well what their needs are. So there's a very important discovery period in the conversations you're going to have with them to understand how you're going to answer their needs. You also want to share your goals for this event. This is going to give them more visibility as to how much reach they're going to have through or how much exposure they're going to be able to have through this event. Examples of metrics you could share with them is how many attendees you're expecting or how many attendees have already registered to the event. A very important conversion rate or KPI would be the check-in rate. On average on the industry, we're going to talk about a 50% check-in for free events. So you might have 100 people register, 50 people attend. We managed to get 58% on the last event we organized. So of course, with the idea of improving, you always want to be aiming higher. So it'll be good for you to prepare some metrics you'll be able to show with objectives and other KPIs, which could be, for example, the average connection time from your attendees at the event, or maybe the amount of meetings if you're going to be having networking at the event, to show how much engagement you really bring through this event. Of course, if you've had past events, you'll want to share the details of those past events. It's a certain way that you can guarantee them that you managed to do this already and you're aiming for more. And with the sponsorship, they're going to help you get to that new objective you have. If you've already had an event, of course, talk about the brands that sponsored your previous event, brag about them. You could even talk about the profit you made if you had any. Show how much impact you can give to your sponsors through the event. In this conversation you're going to be having with them, you might also want to create some type of sense of urgency through the exclusiveness of being able to sponsor your event and how many spots you have and how limited those spots are, meaning that you're reaching out to everyone within this industry. You're going to have this pool of attendees. If you want to jump in, it's now or never. This could be also a very strong statement you can make to generate this sense of scarcity of being a sponsor to your event and exclusivity of reaching that pool of people who's going to be attending your event. You could also talk about your speakers, whether it's for your future event or your past event. Say, look, at our events, we've had this level of speakers. This is generally what will attract people to register to an event. So very interesting to put forward. You could also talk about the brand activations you've had in the past, the different success stories you've had with sponsors in the past, and really try to exploit any card you have in your hand to show how impactful your event can be for them. So now let's imagine that you've presented all of this to your sponsor and you've raised interest. How are you going to be able to show the value you can offer to them through a proposal? One thing you need to bear in mind is that as sponsors, they are the investors for your event. So you're going to be wanting to really try to get them on board. And before jumping on to showing them what you can give them, try to understand what they need. Think about it as if you, for example, go to the doctor for a knee pain, and the doctor is going to come out with all of the proposals he has, all of the ways that he can make you feel better for different illnesses you might be having, and he ends up saying, well, look, for the heart, I can give you these pills, they're the best for your heart pains. Is that going to be relevant to them? Is that going to make any sense to them? What you want to do here is really be specific, ask them what they need, and try to make sure that you can resolve what they're trying to reach. So be relevant and tailor your offer as much as you can to them. It can be unclear to them at first. You might reach out to them and start trying to understand their needs, and they might not even know what they need. So you can suggest what you can offer to them. This could be tailoring your event's branding and making sure that they have that exposure you can give to them. Could be through communication campaigns, through the interface of the event if it's a virtual event. This is also going to bring more attendees since it gives credibility, which we mentioned previously. You could also suggest the merchandising. It could be for physical events, something like pens or memory sticks. But on the other side, it could also be virtual goodie bags. If we're doing virtual events, you could imagine ebooks being part of the merchandising packages. It could be gift cards or promo codes. You see it a lot, promo codes being used in the SaaS industry for these events they sponsor. You could also position them as experts to meet with. If you have a networking session, you could say, meet with this person, and in a certain way, positioning them as experts makes it less salesy and gives more chance of people to go and reach out to them. You could also suggest them to be a speaker. Think about how useful this can be when you're thinking about how to design your program, how to reach all of these speakers you need. I mean, perfect. If you manage to find a sponsor who will be your speaker at the same time, that's two birds, one stone. That also, I say, would make the attendees want to approach this person post-session to eventually ask some questions, and it's a great way to give them exposure. Stage time, similar to the previous point, but we could think about it as a small appearance the sponsor would make at the beginning of the session. It could be the sponsor introducing the keynote speaker, for example, and in that way having a short moment at the beginning of a session to introduce himself. Or it could be something like an advert. You could think about a video which is shown to all of the attendees at some point, and in a certain way have this small advert at the beginning and give them the exposure. Finally, what we're going to come to at the end is certain platforms will have a specific sponsor section. Eventia has a sponsor module in which we're going to be able to put forward those profiles. We'll be taking a look at that in a couple of minutes. So what you want to do basically is offer something different. And here I'm going to focus on online events. It's very obvious for physical events that you're going to be giving them maybe a booth, you're going to have their logos in the entrance, and in a certain way this is going to give them exposure. But for online events, it can be a little tricky to project yourself and imagine, how am I going to give these people exposure? What you need to do is think outside of the box and offer something very unique to make yourself different from other people. Engagement isn't as simple as in person. When you're physically in the place, you're exposed to everything that's around you. When you're virtual, people might tend to have their attention drift away from the event and take into consideration Zoom fatigue. Think different. It's virtual. You can do many things. We've had cases in which we've seen people organize video games, customize some very simple video games like a Pac-Man or Tetris with the logos of the sponsors. They could be specific activities within the program, which are basically part of brand activation. There are many things we can think about here. And of course, the people on our team are there to help you if there are any ideas. Which we can share with you. Basically, what you're going to have to do here is create a category of packages that can be customized. You want to create various packages and also custom packages which will answer their needs specifically. This is why, again, it'll be super important for you to ask and understand them well. Try to figure what you can do for them which other people can't do for them. Your efforts and your will to be customizing these packages for them would also provide yourself value as an event organizer. And you can ensure that your offer will be successful by understanding what their needs are going to be. Here's a quick example of some packages we had for our past event. As you can see here, we had a couple of set packages, which were pretty basic for people to understand. But of course, we offered a custom package in which we say, look, your needs might be different from everyone else's. So let's take a look at what we can do for you here and give you that unique value you might be looking for. So from now, what I'd like to do is show a couple of examples of how you can use Eventia sponsorship module and take a look at the different results you can reach and maybe get familiar with the interface a little bit. I'm going to share my screen with you on an example of an event we had, which was a couple of months ago. First of all, bear in mind that we are online. So there are metrics which you're going to be able to pull out from virtual events, which you won't be able to get in physical events. And there's a certain amount of customization you can bring to the interfaces, such as colors, background images, videos, images, and different places where you're going to be able to give people exposure. At the bottom here, you see we have a couple of logos, of course, which we can put forward. But something which was more specific, which we did here with a sponsor, some exposure we gave to them, was creating a custom module which had a session which people could tune into. And of course, it goes with the event organizers mentioning the possibility to dive into this and explore the universe of the sponsor. So we had the sponsors, I'd say, main activity in this section here. Something which you'll be able to put forward, as well as everything mentioned previously, is the sponsors area within the virtual interface of the event. And if we go into more detail, you see here that there's a customized, there's a specific module for sponsors with different profiles. And if we go into the profile itself, there are a certain amount of elements which the sponsor himself has been able to create and put into place. So simple elements such as the banner and the logo and the description. We have some lead generation tool here, which allows attendees to come and leave a message, for example, and share their contact details with the sponsor. The sponsor can also customize a small plan with his colors and logos and add some actionable buttons, as we have here, to external links. The sponsor can link attendees' profiles, who will be the reps. So here we've got 2 reps which attendees can come and schedule meetings with just by clicking on the profile. So in a very simple way, come forward to this. And let me come back to the sponsors profile. There are many different extra options which can be activated for your sponsors. If you want to allow them to organize activities, for example, which will go into the program, they'll be able to create those and have attendees register to them and join those activities, which could be demos or Zoom calls or any type of content which they would like to have live with a certain amount of people. A couple of videos they can join, some catalogs they can put online, and some items which can be downloaded. Talking about downloading items, on the interface of this webinar, you'll be able to download the presentation and some extra content about sponsorship. On the left side, if you click on the star, you'll be able to access that content. All of this item which we have here, all of the content of this item which we have here is manageable by the sponsor himself. So the organizer will give the sponsor a special access where he will be able to see what his conversion rate was at the event, which contacts he managed to get, and for example, see the messages of which were left by attendees. And of course, customize his own profile. So for instance, put in the description, change the colors, have some images be put in, some videos, create their own activities, downloadable files, and so on. So these were the main elements which I wanted to talk to you about today and show you. We're pretty much coming to the end of the call. I wanted to know if anyone has any specific questions on either the fact of gathering sponsors for your event, but also maybe on the sponsors module itself in Eventia. You can send them via the chat. If there's anything you'd like to ask, now's the moment to do so. Otherwise, you'll also be able to reach out to us post-event by answering the email address which sent you the notifications today to ask any further questions you might have further down the line, of course. Any questions? So, okay, we have a question here. How should I approach my sponsor? Right, so from a commercial point of view, I'd say never send a proposal without understanding what you're trying to solve from this person, from this person's perspective. You want to contact them, you want to ask all of the questions you can have in mind, you want to understand really what are they maybe struggling with at the moment, what are their main objectives, and see how you can answer that through your sponsorship packages by tailoring your sponsorship packages to them. So ask questions, understand the pain, confirm them with them, try to understand what impact you'll be able to generate and what how you'll be able to measure this impact with your sponsor post-event. And once all of this is clear, set it up in a proposal, send it out to them. And I should say that this will be the way to prove to them that the investment, that this relationship is worthy. We've got another question here, which is, how do I prove sponsorship return on investment? Specific metrics can be given, a certain amount of them, of course. I'd say that statistics such as conversion rates, how many contacts they managed to get through the event, how much time people spent in activities which the sponsor led, for example, can be metrics which you can share. However, a certain amount of elements which can be considered as returns on investment are intangible. It'll be sometimes hard to estimate, for example, the brand awareness which was created through the event if people might not have clicked on the button to leave their contacts, for example. Also, something to take into account with return on investment on events, as I mentioned previously, is that very often it will have to be calculated over a large period of time compared to different, let's say, other investments which can be made. Perfect. Oh, Jonathan, a quick question here. If a sponsor seems disinterested or then they say no, how much should you continue the conversation with them, if at all? I'd say it depends on the reason for which they say no. Could they say no because they feel you misinterpreted their needs and that your sponsorship packages aren't adapted? Could it be no because they don't believe, with regards to the first reason to say no, if it's because they believe that it's not adapted, try and dig a bit deeper. Make sure that they've understood or make sure that you've understood their pains well. It might be worth getting back in touch just to make sure, sorry, and say to them, sorry, I'm not sure I understood. I thought that I was answering your needs with this proposal. Would it be worth discussing this again in more detail and making sure that I understand? Another reason for it might be that your credibility, maybe they don't believe you, maybe they think that you're overselling the exposure they could gain. In this case, if you've already had events, go for success stories. Create some material which you might have from previous sponsors, from previous events, and show it to them and try to see how helpful your sponsorship packages was to a sponsor in the past, and this could be a way of convincing them eventually. I think each case is probably very unique and hard to answer in a general way, but if there's clearly no interest at all, I mean, fair enough. There are infinite amounts of sponsors on the market you could probably find. Perfect. If there are no more questions, I would like to thank you all for attending this webinar. A recording of this will be made available online, so you can access it this YouTube channel, and we'll also be publishing this webinar as a replay on the virtual stage. To answer Loic, with regards to the Eventus pricing on the website, as for sponsorship packages, our solutions are very often tailored to any event organizer's needs. Feel free to reach out to me, oliver@eventure.com. I can pass you on to a person from our team, and we can understand what your requirements are, and from there, give you a clearer idea of pricing. Thank you very much, and well, I look forward to seeing some more from you in the future. Goodbye.